Ever wonder how we can actually tell what crops are growing around the world?
Like from space?
Yeah, from space.
That's wild.
It's not magic, it's machine learning.
Ah, okay.
And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today,
Awesome.
using satellite imagery and machine learning to classify crops.
Cool.
All thanks to this fascinating 2020 research paper by some scientists at Ericsson Nikola Tesla in Croatia.
Okay.
So get this, they're basically using satellites as these like giant cameras in the sky
Wow.
to like zoom in and identify crops from space.
That's impressive.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you ready to kind of break down how this actually works?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome.
I'm really intrigued by how they didn't just look at a single image from space.
Right.
They actually analyzed a whole year's worth of satellite data.
Oh, multi-temporal approach, huh?
Yeah, exactly, to
Yeah.
get a much more complete picture of the crops.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
But first, can we rewind a bit?
sure.
How do satellites even see crops in the first place?
Ugh, good question. So it all starts with the Sentinel-2 satellites.
Okay.
These things are incredible. They capture images of the Earth using 13 different bands of the electromagnetic spectrum.
13 different bands. So it's like 13 different kinds of images all at once.
It is. Think of it like this. Each satellite has 13 different cameras,
Okay.
each with a special filter.
Okay.
And those filters, they highlight specific aspects of what's down on Earth.
I see.
So some bands capture the visible light, like the green we see with our eyes.
Okay.
Others pick up invisible infrared light, which can tell us things about plant health and how much water they have.
Wow. So it's way more than just snapping a regular photo from up there.
Way more. It gives us a ton of data to work with.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
And how detailed are we talking here? Like how much area does each pixel in these images actually cover?
Good question. It depends on the band, but some pixels represent a 10 square meter area on the ground, others 20, so we get a pretty good view. For example, if a pixel in the near infrared band has a really high value, that could mean a lot of chlorophyll, which would tell us we're probably looking at a healthy, thriving crop.
Okay, I get that. But you can't just look at one single pixel and know exactly what's growing there, right?
Right, there's a whole lot of data processing that happens.
Makes sense.
Researchers use these things called vegetation indices.
Vegetation indices, what are those?
They're calculations, basically. And they're based on the different bands of light. These indices give us even more specific information about the plants than just the raw pixel values.
So it's like taking those 13 photos you mentioned earlier and sort of squeezing even more information out of them.
Exactly.
Cool.
And they use 15 different vegetation indices in this research, each one highlighting something different about the plant's health and how it's growing.
So they've got all this data from the satellites, they've run these calculations, but how do they actually connect all that to knowing which specific crops are growing where?
That's where ground truth data comes in. They use data from the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture.
USDA, okay.
That told them what crop was actually growing in each location their satellite data covered.
Ah, so it's like they had a cheat sheet for the computer, so to speak, to teach it what to look for.
Yeah, kind of. They carefully matched the satellite data to the USDA records and built this really detailed training data set.
Cool.
And that was key for the next step, training the machine learning models, teaching the computer to actually recognize each crop based on its own unique light signature. But that's a story for after a quick break.
I'm hooked already.
Yep, Jerry.
Can't wait to hear how they taught the computer to become like a crop-identifying superstar. We'll be back in a flash to uncover that machine learning magic.
So we've got all this amazing data from the satellites. We've got those vegetation indices calculated. Now it's time for the really cool part.
The machine learning part.
Exactly. This is where we bring in the brains of the operation, the machine learning models.
Okay, so we're basically teaching a computer to recognize patterns in all that data.
Right.
But how do you even start doing that?
Well, there are all sorts of machine learning models, and
Mhm.
they each have their own, strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
The researchers in this paper, they actually tried out a bunch of different ones.
Oh, really?
Like linear discriminant analysis, that one's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But then they also use more complex ones like k-nearest neighbors, support vector machines, even neural networks.
Neural networks, those are the really advanced ones, right? Like modeled after the human brain and all that.
Yeah, those are the rock stars. They're super powerful, but they can be a bit of a challenge to train,
Right.
and to fine-tune.
Right.
The researchers really wanted to see which model would be the best for this specific task, classifying crops from satellite data.
This is like a competition between different brains to
Right.
see which one's the best at identifying crops.
Exactly. And the winner is the random forest model.
Random forest.
Yep.
And how accurate was it?
90%.
90%. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. So what makes this random forest model so good at this?
Okay, so imagine a bunch of decision trees.
Okay.
Each tree is asking a series of questions about the data.
Like what kind of questions?
Like, is the NDVI value above a certain number, or is this other vegetation index within a particular range?
So each tree is analyzing the data a little differently.
Exactly. And then the model combines all the votes from each of those trees to make a final prediction about what crop is there.
Interesting. So it's not just relying on one single analysis, it's combining a whole bunch of them.
Right, which is what makes it so accurate. It reduces bias, especially when you're working with really complex data. And get this, they didn't just test it on the same area they got the training data from.
Oh, so they made sure it could actually generalize to new areas.
Exactly. They tested it on a whole different part of California. And guess what?
It's still got 90%.
Still 90%.
So it's not just memorizing the locations from the training data, it's actually learning something about how to differentiate between different crops based on their, what'd you call it?
Their spectral signatures.
Right, spectral signatures. That's amazing.
It really shows you what machine learning can do when you combine it with all this incredible satellite data. We can learn so much about agriculture.
Yeah, you're not kidding. We could use this to monitor crop health, predict how much food we'll be able to grow, even find new places to farm.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning. As this technology gets even better, who knows what we'll be able to do?
I'm just blown away by how much information we can get from these satellite images.
I know, right?
It's like having this incredibly detailed bird's eye view of the whole planet. And then on top of that, we can use machine learning to understand it all and actually do something with that information.
Absolutely. It's a really powerful combination, though we should be realistic. There are still some challenges to overcome. Like, what do you do when it's cloudy?
Right. The satellites can't see through clouds.
Exactly. And some crops are just harder to identify than others.
Oh, that's right. Didn't the paper say something about grapes being easy, but pistachios and walnuts being tricky?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's definitely more work to do, but it's exciting to see how far we've already come. And now I think it's time to step back a bit and think about the bigger picture.
You mean like the ethical side of things?
Exactly. Things like data privacy and making sure our machine learning models aren't biased.
Right, because if the training data isn't really representative of the real world, that could lead to all sorts of problems.
Precisely. So lots to think about there. But overall, this research really opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
You know, it's amazing to think about how we could use this tech on like a global scale.
Right.
Like imagine monitoring deforestation
Yeah, in the Amazon.
or the spread of deserts like in Africa.
Exactly. Or even see how natural disasters impact things. Floods, droughts.
To help guide relief efforts and stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
It really feels like, I don't know, we're entering this whole new era of understanding the planet,
I think so, yeah.
using these amazing tools to try and solve some of our biggest problems.
Definitely. And it's not just about observing, it's about using what we learn to make better decisions.
Right.
You know?
I keep thinking about that 90% accuracy.
Yeah,
It's impressive, but it also means there's still room for improvement.
right. Oh, for sure.
So what are some of the limitations we need to work on? Like, what are the next steps for this tech?
Well, clouds are still a big issue.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, if it's cloudy, the satellites can't see anything.
Right, just like trying to take a photo through a blanket.
Exactly. So researchers are trying to come up with algorithms,
The algorithm.
yeah, to basically fill in the gaps in the data
Oh, I see.
from cloudy days,
Hmm.
using data from nearby areas or from different days.
That's pretty clever. What about using radar satellites? I mean, those can see through clouds, right?
They can. That's another area that's getting a lot of attention. So, yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening there.
What about improving the accuracy? Is it just a matter of getting more data and improving the machine learning?
Pretty much, yeah. The more data we feed these models, the better they get at recognizing different crops
Okay.
and spotting those subtle differences in plant health. There's also a lot of research into developing new vegetation indices.
Right, to make them even more precise.
Exactly. So it's a constantly evolving field. It's amazing to think what we'll be able to do in the future.
I know. What are some of the most exciting things you see coming down the line?
Well, precision agriculture, that's a big one.
Precision agriculture.
Imagine giving each plant exactly what it needs. The right amount of fertilizer, water.
Individually.
Yeah, based on what the satellites are telling us.
Wow. That's amazing.
That could seriously boost how much food we grow And cut down on
can
waste.
help the environment.
Absolutely.
And with climate change being such a big concern, this tech could be really important, right, for monitoring its effects on agriculture.
Definitely. We can track how growing seasons are changing, see how pests and diseases are spreading,
Oh,
and
right.
figure out which crops are most at risk from extreme weather.
I mean, it's inspiring, right, to see how this research is not just pushing the boundaries of science,
Yeah.
but also giving us real solutions to problems that affect all of us.
I completely agree. And it's not just for scientists either. There are already open source tools out there. Anyone can use them.
Really?
Yeah, to explore satellite data and even play around with machine learning.
That's amazing. So anyone can basically become a citizen scientist.
Exactly. I mean, who knows what amazing discoveries are waiting to be made.
Right.
So we've come a long way from talking about satellites and machine learning to how it all impacts agriculture and even the future of our planet.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And I think the big takeaway here is that we're in this amazing time. We have this incredible technology at our fingertips, but it's up to us to use it wisely.
Yeah, for the good of everyone.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to encourage you to keep that curiosity alive. Keep exploring, keep asking those questions. The more we learn about our planet, the better we can protect it for ourselves and for generations to come.
Well said. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this incredible adventure. Until next time, happy exploring.